Good evening, all. This is Chair Mark Kogler of the Paso Robles Planning Commission. I'd like to call to order the meeting of April 27th, 2021. At the beginning of the meeting, there is information that we share regarding some of the COVID practices, and I'll do that now. Please note that due to COVID-19 emergency and in compliance with the state and county shelter of homeowners, and as allowed by the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, which allows for a deviation of teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act, Planning Commission meetings will be held by teleconference only until further notice. A video stream of Planning Commission meeting presentations will be live streamed and available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube. Rather than attending in person, project applicants and members of the public must call 805-865-7276 to participate via phone. The phone line will open just prior to the start of the meeting at 6:30 p.m. or written public comments can be submitted via email to planning@prcity.com. Written comments received prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will be posted as an addendum to the agenda online at www.prcity.com/agenda center/planning-commission-5. That's the number 5. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the item on the agenda. And with that, we will move into item B, which is a Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Jorgensen, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, I would be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. And now we'll have a roll call vote to the Planning Commission, please.
Commissioner Christensen?
Present.
Commissioner Covarrubias?
Present.
Commissioner Davis?
Present.
Commissioner Neal?
Present.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
I'm here.
Commissioner Gibson?
I'm here.
Chairperson Kogler?
Here.
All present.
Very good, thank you. Staff introductions, please.
Yes, Warren Frace, Community Development Director. With me tonight is Darren Nash, City Planner. Lori Wilson, our Assistant Planner. Jessica Ferguson is our Administrative Assistant, along with Ashley Peterson. And then Karen Jackson is here as IT support.
Okay, thank you again. Item E on the agenda is general public comments regarding matters not on the agenda. Do we have anybody out there that is wishing to comment?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. With that, we will move on to item F, which is agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled. Do we have any of those?
There are none.
Very good. We'll just keep moving along this evening. The next section of agenda is the section of public hearings. We have one this evening. It's conditional use permit 21-14 P21-0016, accessory dwelling unit conversion to a second multifamily unit. It's located at 320 12th Street, and the applicant is Pioneer Airport, LLC. Do we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good evening, everybody. This is Lori Wilson, Assistant Planner. I'll be taking you through the staff report tonight for the conditional use permit for Les Whittlesey. And this is to designate a second residential unit in the office professional zone. The lot we're looking at tonight is at 320 12th Street. It's zoned office professional. It's surrounded by additional parcels of the same zoning and then multifamily in the rear. This is the site plan as it exists today. There is an existing primary residence to the north. They've constructed a detached garage and then an accessory dwelling unit in the rear of the property. So while the city zoning ordinance requires an office professional use that you have a conditional use permit for a second residential dwelling unit, state law allows by right the ability to construct an ADU. So when Les submitted plans to the building department for this ADU, he was very clear in his intent that he wanted to be able to rent it out at least part-time as a short-term rental. While we were going through plan check, though, and before he could get his permit issued, state law was updated and said that for ADUs, you can no longer permit them as short-term rentals. So Les was able to design the ADU to meet the requirements of a second unit. So all the development standards, setbacks, height requirements, size that we would require of a second unit, in hopes of being able to move forward with this conditional use permit and get approval to be able to apply for a short-term rental permit. So he's also provided a parking stall here, which would be required for a second unit. And that's also, the requirement would just be one space for a one-bedroom short-term rental. So I included a few site photos just so you can kind of get a feel for what's out there today. This is the primary residence on site. The detached garage. You can start to kind of see that ADU in the back there. And then the ADU that's currently under construction. I think we might have a little bit of delay in the broadcast there, but hopefully that is on your screen. Should be looking at the current elevations and floor plan for the ADU. Les has designed this ADU to match architecturally the primary residence, so the roof materials, siding, windows. He's put a lot of great detail into this to have it all be consistent with what's out there today. I included this table. This was also in the staff report. I don't want to go through line by line, but I just thought it might be helpful in case anybody had any questions. What this was doing was just kind of outlining, because it can get kind of confusing, what the state allows as far as development standards for ADUs, what our zoning ordinance requires in the office professional zone for setbacks and height, et cetera. And then finally, what is being provided with this ADU. So again, he's meeting setbacks, height, parking requirements, and square footage. So with that, the options before the commission tonight would be to approve draft resolution A, which is approving conditional use permit 21-14, subject to the site-specific conditions of approval. Refer back to staff for additional analysis or amend the above noted options. And I believe we also have the owner on the line today, so either the owner or myself is happy to answer any questions. I'll pass it back to the commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll follow kind of normal practice here, and we'll run through first of all and see if there are any questions that commission members have of staff, and then we'll open the hearing and see if Mr. Littlesey has something to add. Questions at all? Commissioner Davis, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'll just refresh my memory. Lori, well, actually, two questions. First of all, what was the intent in the new law restricting ADUs from converting into SCRs? What was the rationale there?
So the rationale, excuse me, was they were making it easier, having more flexible setbacks, reducing the fees in an attempt to increase housing. So they want to make it easier for folks to build ADUs so that we would have more long-term housing available. Okay, that's what I was thinking. And then refresh my memory. Gosh, I can't believe I don't know the answers to this. We went through the short-term rental ordinance, but we can have two SCRs in one property that close together. Is there any problem with that? Correct. Yeah. So you can have up to 2 short-term rental units per parcel. And then there is no buffer zone. The 100-foot buffer zone only applies in the R1 zone. So being office professional, there's no buffer zone for them either. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. No, that's all right. I will let you finish that. I was just going to say there is a current short-term rental permit issued for the primary residence on the parcel. So this would be the second one. So does the second one then have to be queued up and, in the waiting period, or does it go with the original permit? So it would be a separate permit, but we do have roughly 17 available still, as long as zoned
Yeah.
R1, so they could apply for one.
Okay, thank you for refreshing my memory. That's it for right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Christensen, questions?
Thank you. No, I don't have any at this time. I was part of the DRC meeting for this one.
Very good. Commissioner Gibson.
Yeah, just to clarify, make sure I was tracking this, is that could you confirm that the short-term rental then it would be the front house, correct? Not the back house. The back house is prohibited as an ADU from being a short-term rental. Is that correct?
The way it stands right now, yes. They have a current short-term rental permit for the primary residence, and the ADU would be restricted. If this use permit was approved, though, it would be designating that ADU as a second unit, and then it would be able to apply for a second short-term rental permit for this back structure.
Okay, so I didn't really pick that up. So, and is that what we're being asked to approve? Is that in essence we would turn the AD unit into a short-term rental as well, or enable him so that they could end up with 2 short-term rentals?
Right. So the official approval is designating it as a second multifamily unit in this zone, but
Okay.
that would essentially allow for that. Yes.
All right. So we're calling it a second unit as opposed to an ADU, and that by doing that, that's what enables this what was an ADU to be designated as an STR.
Correct. And
Okay.
the second unit have to abide by more stringent development standards, and they also have to pay additional fees as far as development impact fees with the building permit. So if this use permit was approved, it would go back through building review to make sure that the correct fees were charged as a full second unit.
Okay. All right. Perfect. I'm glad Sherry brought something up because I was not understanding that that's what was actually going on. So that is all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Covarrubias, questions?
Sorry, I was on mute, Lori. Just a curiosity question for you. You provided a map of the surrounding area that noted all the other ADUs in the area. My question is, are we limited in the number of ADUs in any specific area?
So the map was pointing out the other short-term rentals in the area, not necessarily ADUs. Do you mean short-term rentals, or are you?
Yeah, short-term rentals.
Okay, yes. So there's a limit of short-term rentals that can be in the R1 zone, and then there's a separate limit that gets tied to all other zones. So we have roughly 17 left available. The total number that's allowed across all zones is 325. So we have 17 left of those 325 that we can issue, but we can only issue them outside of the R1 zones right now.
Got it. Okay, perfect. No other questions.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Jorgensen, questions?
Thank you, Chairman Kogler. I have a question on sheet LS1 on it says carriage garage, existing carriage garage. Is that really a garage, or is that yet another occupiable space? And the reason I'm asking is because it has a nice porch in front of it attached to it. And on the side, according to this plan, it doesn't show in the photo you just put up, but on the would be the east side, it looks like it has a pair of barn doors or sliding doors of some kind. So is this an occupied, is this space for human occupancy as well?
Yeah, good question. It's not. I did a site visit out there and was able to check it all out, and it's not a habitable space. There's no restroom in there, no sort of habitable facilities. It's just a garage, open garage. They actually have a large dining table in there. They use it for outdoor dining. So it's a pretty neat space, and unfortunately I didn't have I do have a different photo I should have popped in here that shows the inside, but it is not another living unit.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Neal, questions?
No questions. I was on DRC as well. I had all my questions answered there. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And I also was on DRC and saw this one. I just have one question about, after seeing it in the field, the parking place that is adjacent to the ADU structure, is that really accessible? It's a pretty narrow alley there. Is that tight? Can somebody get into that space and really use it?
It is accessible. Excuse me. From the rear here, there's a gate that opens all the way up. So I did check that out when I was out there. It's accessible to get into there. We might want to let the applicant answer further about how the rest of the access is there on the alley. I did not quite take a look at that when I was out there. Is that more so your question about accessing the alleyway and getting in there, or just that gated area?
It was more to, when you turned into that alley, there's a large parking lot that you pass through first. And then the alley itself narrows down considerably, and it's fairly narrow as it passes in front of the site. And so I was just curious, is there enough room to reasonably maneuver a vehicle in there and fully utilize that parking place? And if you'd like, we can just defer that question until we open the hearing in a moment. Maybe Mr. Whittlesey can address that.
I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, let's do that. Any other questions that commissioners have of staff? If not, we'll open the public hearing. Consider the public hearing open, and I would start maybe by first of all seeing if the applicant, Mr. Whittlesey, has any information you'd like to share with us about this proposal.
Hi, this is Les Whittlesey. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. We came to Paso, I guess, over just a little background, over like 20 years ago, been coming for a while, was able to purchase this house and restore it to its grandeur. It was built in 1892. And we had always envisioned doing something kind of really nice, upper scale. And through that process, we did the front house, and always had envisioned really a rear unit as a STR. In order to accommodate, we have two couples that would go in the front, 4 people, and then 2 in the back. And part of the reason is that we have 2 daughters, and the idea is that we come, besides as a STR, we'd be able to use the property, but we would have enough for the entire family. When we made the decision to start the construction of what is now the ADU, not so much to try to game the system, but it was really under that purview, we could start construction in order to kind of speed up the process in getting it completed. We had originally pulled permits at the start of last year, and then COVID hit and stopped because no one knew what was going to happen. In retrospect, based on building costs, we should have kept going. And then what we had gotten wind of is that one of the reasons that we just also decided not to go for it at that time is that we didn't want to start construction until we had a CUP in hand, and with everything up in the air, we decided to hold off. Then in further discussions with the city, they're re-looking at all the requirements for CUPs and requirements for the zoning that we're in. That will probably go away for this type of use. So we figure it was almost like a fait accompli from the standpoint of in the future not going to require a CUP, but we figured to do it anyways. We didn't want to build something and then be operational and then be operating kind of like under the table or under the radar. We didn't want that at all. We want everything kind of be above board. And we've taken great care to make sure that the rear unit matched the front house. It was basically a smaller version of the front house. The carriage garage, as you replaced a very, very bad and ugly garage. We made it match the house, but we built it. Basically, it works kind of as a workout room, office, or ancillary use to the main house, because the house is only like 950 square feet. But it makes this kind of like what we found has been very desirable during COVID, especially as you have your own space. You can kind of have your own area. But as noted, it doesn't have bathrooms. It doesn't even have water over there. It just has electricity. And so, that's, pretty basic. The And then on the parking, the parking is we've spent a lot of time designing it that you could get a car in and out of there. I have got in and out of there. Is it tight? Yeah. It's not as easy as my front one, but it is doable. It's just a function of a little bit narrower alleyway. But the default would be at the fire department. They didn't think it was doable. They probably never would have approved anything. So I don't think I'd park a Sprinter van back there. We got a Toyota Sequoia. I can get it back in there, in and out. And we made it so that you could have enough room to be able to park and get the vehicle in and out of there.
Very good, thank you. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this issue?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay, I think that being the case, we'll close the public hearing and we'll turn this back to the commission for discussion and or any other questions that may have arisen for staff or for the applicant. Let's go in reverse order and let's start with Commissioner Neal.
Still no questions.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Jorgensen, any questions, comments, discussion points?
I have a question for staff. This parking stall that we were just talking about, rather than saying that it'll fit this car or that car, the city has standards for a parking space and a turning radius. So does it meet those standards or does it not?
It does, yes. It meets the standards for a parking space that was reviewed as part of the building permit.
Okay, thank you. I guess I had no other comment.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Covarrubias, any questions or discussion points?
No further questions.
All right, Commissioner Gibson.
I have no questions, thank you.
Commissioner Christensen.
None from me. Thank you very much.
And Commissioner Davis.
I just have a question. Lori, I noticed in the staff report there were letters of support from some neighbors. Have we received any other correspondence since then?
No, we have not.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Very good. Unless anybody else on the commission has something they'd like to add, it would seem appropriate if somebody would like to propose a motion on this.
This is Commissioner Neal. I will give it a whirl. I'd like to move approval of draft resolution A, approving conditional use permit 21-14, subject to site-specific conditions of approval.
I'll second that. This is Commissioner Gibson.
We have a motion from Commissioner Neal, a second by Commissioner Gibson. Any other discussion on the motion or on the item? If not, would staff please call the roll?
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Chairperson Kogler.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you all. That concludes the public hearing portion of our agenda tonight. So next up is item H, which are discussion items. And the first is the Planning Commission Liaison Appointments discussion. This is an item that had its roots, I think, in our discussion last meeting when Mr. Davis indicated she was continuing to serve as a liaison person to the Main Street group. And that prompted a discussion about whether or not we should more formalize those or at least be aware of what those appointments were. So with that, is there some staff comment on this, please?
Yeah, let me get this screen reset here real quick. There we go. Yeah, so at your last meeting, you asked to agendize this for discussion. And the issue is the status of the Planning Commission appointing liaisons to other city committees and public bodies. So historically, the Planning Commission did have what we called liaisons to other committees. What's on the screen right now is one of the Planning Commission agendas from 2015. So you'll see under 7 that we used to have regular reports from a liaison to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, to the Main Street Program, and to the Airport Advisory Committee. We also had a temporary Historic Resources Ad Hoc Committee that's been discontinued. But Parks and Rec, Main Street, and Airport were standing committees that we appointed liaisons to. Currently, I think it was about 2017, the Planning Commission decided to discontinue the practice. I think at the time, between DRC and other projects, the Planning Commission felt that they didn't really have time to allocate to additional committees for these liaison functions. But that is fully discretionary to the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission chose not to have liaisons. The Planning Commission now could choose to reinstate some or all of them. So we put this on the agenda just for general discussion and direction in terms of how the Planning Commission would like to move forward on this issue.
Very good. Thank you, Warren. So the principal reason this was dropped was one of concern just for time. The commissioners are pulled in a number of different directions just with Planning Commission related duties.
That's staff's understanding.
Okay. What's the commission think about this? I don't know. We don't have very many of us that have been on for a very long period of time, and so we don't have the history, maybe even going back to this agenda in 2015 in many cases. What are your thoughts as commissioners and experience with this?
Commissioner Kogler, I just wanted to give a little bit of background. I think Warren is correct and very accurately portrayed at that time. I'm the only one, I think, still in the commission that was serving on some of these committees as an official liaison. And I served on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. And then just a little bit of background. I think 2017 sounds about right, Warren. 2018, when I think Commissioner Barth was chair, Main Street has always wanted reports and a liaison. They've been very clear about that. And so as chair, he continued to serve in that capacity. And then I became chair and they kind of cornered me, and I have stayed there thinking maybe the new chair would do that. But as I sat and looked at the agendas, I realized it's officially describing a commissioner as a liaison. They have a city council liaison to that particular program. And while they really want that, I felt I should run that by you to see if you wanted me to serve in that regard. I'm happy to do so, but I think in the past there was the thinking it might be the chair that would serve in that capacity. So a little bit of background, and I do agree with Warren that it was kind of a time commitment, and but Main Street was very vocal about wanting an official liaison. So that's a little bit more background.
Thank you. That's actually very helpful. Warren, has there been any clamoring by the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee or the Airport Advisory Committee to have a Planning Commission liaison person become involved?
No, I don't think we've ever heard from either of those committees that was an issue either way for them. But Commissioner Davis is correct that Main Street has been pretty vocal that they really like to have a Planning Commission liaison available.
Okay. Any of the commissioners have comments on this as to the thoughts about doing this or not doing this, or even any personal interest one would have in basically looking at, I'll set aside Main Street for the moment, Airport and Parks and Rec.
Chairman Kogler?
Yes.
I think I was on the Planning Commission for like 5 minutes when the vote was taken to discontinue advisor or liaison positions. So I don't claim to have any context to that, because seriously, it was like my first or second meeting. But I do believe, and this is maybe information I received sort of unofficially after that, was that without even a stipend for the Planning Commission members, we already have Planning Commission meetings. We have DRC that we serve on weekly for 5 months out of the year, and there didn't seem to be a great outcry for Planning Commission members to attend the other meetings. And so, and we're certainly open to anybody to go to any of these meetings. But I would concur with that philosophy, whether that was accurate at the time or not, that I think we do quite a lot as purely volunteers. So that would be my thought.
Okay, thank you. Others of equal mind or any other opinions on this? On the commission?
This is Commissioner Christensen. It's more of a question, I guess, for Warren. Would it be, if we so chose to just have a liaison for one committee, would that be problematic? If we're not getting requests from other committees to do that, but Main Street is requesting that, can the Planning Commission decide that that's just the one that we're going to provide if we so choose?
Yes, you could definitely just choose to provide one liaison, if any.
It would seem to me, and I agree with Commissioner Jorgensen, that the time is, obviously, we spend a lot of time. I'm okay with just the Main Street Committee, if that's something, because they tend to be very close to what the city does downtown, what have you, but I'm open for either on that. And if no one else is asking for us to have a liaison, I say that we don't need to provide one. So that's my opinion.
Any other commissioners like to speak to the topic?
This is Commissioner Covarrubias. I agree with Commissioner Christensen. My question is, with the Main Street Association or program, they've been around for so long, is if we did just stick with them, is the thought that we would then rotate the representative? I mean, how would we designate, is one person just going to be part of that program long term? How are we going to monitor that so that it doesn't become too cumbersome for just one individual?
Seemingly, we could do that a number of ways. Apparently, in the past, there was an annual commitment by the chair to sit on that group. Commissioner Jorgensen somehow managed to keep her head down, which I would like to do as well, and stay under the radar on this. And so Commissioner Davis soldiered on through a second year. A couple of thoughts that I have. One is certainly I have no problem with Commissioner Davis if she's willing to continue in that capacity, but maybe we should make this an annual re-up, if you will, either at this point in time or at the point in time where we do our organizational meeting at the beginning of the year. The other question I would have is, do we need an alternate? And I don't know that we do, just in case Commissioner Davis is not available to do this. But I would personally like to see the Main Street connections stay active with the Planning Commission. I think there's a lot of relationships that we have to one another and importance of good communication there. I do think, however, that when we now are more formalizing, at least leaning towards the Main Street one, that Commissioner Davis, we would have a section on our agenda, be it appropriate for a brief update to the full commission about what's going on with Main Street. I think would be helpful. Other thoughts commissioners have?
Can I just comment on that?
Absolutely.
The liaisons give a report at Main Street and then they're excused from the meeting. So it's like it's one way. It's providing information, what's happening at Planning Commission, and then the liaisons typically leave and we don't hear their board meeting. And so it hasn't been a time-consuming activity, but it has not been, if you can understand, kind of reciprocal. My term will be ending in March, and so this decision will come up relatively soon if you ask me to continue on. And again, they didn't officially push me to do this. I just felt that I needed to let you know I was serving in that capacity and needing some nod to go ahead or not. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the clarification, because I assumed liaison was a two-way street and not a one-way situation. So what you're saying is basically you're simply summarizing for them kind of the issues and proposals and things that are coming before the commission?
That's the way it's happening. I think we would be allowed to attend, but typically the city council liaison and the planning commission liaison, in the interest of time, have left the meeting at that time. But I got to hear the guest speaker last time. Supervisor Pashong was there. So I guess there is an opportunity for two-way. They're not excluding us, but typically we do not stay for the whole meeting. So I wanted to clarify that.
And then one other quick question of you, Commissioner Davis. You mentioned your commitment expires in March. Is that date set by the Main Street program itself, or is that set by some other?
That's set by my term concluding. My term as a planning commissioner ends in March.
Okay, that's where you were going with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Gibson.
Yes.
I would echo, I guess, pretty much all of the sentiments that have been expressed. But I would come more in line with your comments, Chairperson Kogler, that perhaps we could have Sherry take on continue to take on this role through her term, and set this up as an item that could be discussed at the annual organization meeting. But I agree with what Rob and Ty are saying too, is that I don't see a need if these other groups are not asking us to be there. For all we know, maybe they don't want us there, or there's no need for us to be there. So if another group comes forward and would like us to have send a representative, then I'm all in favor of that. I absolutely understand why Main Street would want a representative. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me, just knowing and how they are organized and knowing Norma. But I'm perfectly fine with just leaving it at that as well. I mean, unless these other groups, Park and Rec or Airport Advisory or any other group, specifically asked for us to have a representative, I'm fine with just having Main Street and fine with just having Sherry continue on that role as long as she's willing to do it. But again, as you indicated, perhaps then set it as a term and then an item to be discussed at the annual meeting next March.
It seems like we have pretty good consensus on the commission right now that we don't see the need to institute a liaison with the other two active committees right now, and that the Main Street program connection has been valuable, at least particularly on the Main Street side, and we should keep that in place. And Commissioner Davis, having expressed the interest and willingness to fulfill that role through the end of her term in March, that at that point in time, we could go through and see, as part of a reorganization, if someone else will pick up that baton and has interest in being that liaison. Warren, do we need to formalize this in any way, or is this just kind of a consensus? If this is the way we think it should work, it can work?
Yeah, I think if we could just get consensus on your summary would be done.
Okay.
Chairman Kogler?
Yes.
May I ask one question? If we formalize this, are we requiring the Planning Commission to provide a liaison to Main Street? I'd be a lot more comfortable if we have a volunteer who is interested in doing that, we will provide this as a courtesy or a good citizen effort. But I don't think I'd be comfortable in indicating that we shall provide a Main Street or any other liaison. That would be my opinion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think what will happen is if you do make this appointment, what we're going to do is add the Main Street program report to the agenda. So it'll become kind of a standing item. It doesn't actually require anybody to attend the meetings, but we will basically ask if there's a report every meeting as a follow-up.
Chairperson Kogler?
Yes.
Commissioner Neal?
Yes, Commissioner Neal.
Based on what Sherry said, it doesn't seem like the report would provide any information to the commission necessarily, as we are only providing information to Main Street. So I'm kind of leaning towards this being a voluntary planning commission attendance to the Main Street program.
Mr. Chairperson, this is Commissioner Christensen.
Yes.
I think Commissioner Neal has got a point there. I think maybe if this is something, if we can make this kind of an elective, you know, if one of the commissioners decides that they would like to attend, volunteer to attend, I think that would probably be probably an easier appointment rather than making it a mandatory type thing that the Planning Commission has to provide somebody like Commissioner Jorgensen was kind of referring to.
So I think if we don't make any changes and just leave things as is, that's the current condition. If you make it a formal appointment, then we'll add it to the agenda kind of as a standing item to be monitored.
Okay. I think with that, and from what I'm hearing, we're very comfortable with Commissioner Davis as a volunteer in essence, being that liaison without formalizing it any more than that. And should she not be able to or no longer want to do that, I think she could certainly notify staff, and then staff could reach out to the commission to see if another one of us would pick up that baton. And so we've kind of gone around this discussion point. I think we're back to kind of where we are today with the way it's operating. Does that work for everybody?
That works for me. I like I said, I'd be happy to volunteer, and just as I have been. I just wanted you aware that that was what was happening.
And this is Commissioner Neal. I'm happy with that direction as well.
I think we have our ongoing liaison for life, Commissioner Davis.
Round of applause.
Indeed. Round of applause it is. Okay, very good. We'll operate under that mode. And I think, Commissioner Davis, if you certainly do ever catch any information that would be valuable coming back our direction, I trust certainly you would bring that back to us as well. So you always have a chance to do that in Planning Commissioner comments.
Thank you. I will certainly do that.
All right. There's no more discussion on this item. We will move on to our consent calendar, which is a couple of items. It's Development Review Committee minutes to be approved for the April 5th, 2021 and April 19, 2021 meetings. And then the Planning Commission minutes for the April 13th, 2021 meeting.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I put up on the screen that staff identified an error in the Planning Commission minutes where we referenced a resolution. There was no resolution, so staff is recommending that we amend the minutes to indicate that it was just a recommendation to the City Council as shown on the screen. Okay. As such, do you want to handle that separately, or can we roll that into an approval of the DRC meeting minutes as well? Would you prefer to handle them separately since this is an action to amend the minutes? I think you could do it with one motion. You could just reference what's on the screen in the motion. Okay. Are there any
Chairman
comments?
Kogler?
Yes.
Yes, I have a comment. This is Commissioner Jorgensen. I have a comment on DRC April 19th.
Okay.
Item number 1. It's on the Hotel Paso Robles, and there's a fairly lengthy description of the discussion, and I would request that 2 changes be made to the bullet points. The first bullet point, my proposal is that the be the first and second sentences be modified as follows, and those who are also Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Gibson were also there, so see if you agree with me. Due to the swimming pool proposed on the 2nd floor at the corner of Pine Street and Pine and 14th Street, and then I'd like to add and other back of house uses along 14th Street. The project lacks public interfacing activity, pedestrian interest on the 1st floor, period, and delete at this corner. And then my second comment is the next sentence after that, e.g. restaurant and banquet room to be moved, suggested as a potential to be moved toward 14th Street. I'd like to take out banquet room. I don't think that was part of the discussion. It was the restaurant. And then my last comment is the 4th bullet. The walls facing the alley are largely blank. That's true, but it doesn't really say what our concern was. Words to the effect of and should consider views from adjacent buildings and streets.
Could you consider doing what?
You want me to start at the beginning or on that last one?
Just on the 4th one, it said walls are largely blank.
The alley are largely blank, and that's certainly true, but it didn't say and what our comment was about that.
Right.
So I'm suggesting we add something like, and should consider views toward the building or from adjacent buildings and street.
Should consider the views.
Toward the building.
Okay, toward the
or
building.
You could just say toward the building, period, if you want.
Got it. Okay, and then just to clarify up on the first bullet, so after Pine and 14th Street, you want to add and other back of house uses, and then
along 14th Street, back of house uses along 14th Street.
Okay.
And then delete at this corner, because it wasn't just the corner, it was the corner and the whole frontage on 14th.
But keep, which is an important design consideration, keep that though, correct?
Yeah, correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
All right, I believe we have and then drop banquet room after
Correct.
restaurant. Okay.
Yes.
This is Commissioner
do the
Gibson.
other attendees agree?
Let's hear from Commissioner Gibson.
I would concur with what Commissioner Jorgensen is saying. The 4th item where it says the walls facing the alley, it's actually specifically, because I was the one that brought that up, is that the west facing walls, because of the height, were largely blank, and they would be seen from wide distances, from properties facing the west looking to the east. And we suggested that instead of the them being blank, that they needed to have some sort of features to them similar to the other 3 walls. So it wasn't. I guess my objection was that it wasn't the alley. It wasn't the issue of a wall on an alley. It was the idea that it's a 4-story building, and the west wall was blank, and because it is so much higher than the rest of the surrounding buildings, you're going to see that wall from everywhere.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Davis, I think you were the 3rd there. Do you concur with the other comments?
I do concur with what Roberta's recommendations. I know what Field is talking about. I don't think we specified how they should fix those blank walls, but that there was a concern about that as an architectural feature. So those are my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, corrections to the minutes, either DRC or Planning Commission?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Christensen, and this is more of a question for the other commissioners that were on DRC for April 5th. Item number 3 for the San Antonio Winery. For some reason, I remember there was also discussion about the landscape to continue from the street view of Golden Hill with that project. And I'm hoping that maybe one of the other commissioners can kind of refresh my memory, or maybe I'm just incorrect altogether. But I know we liked the phase plan or the phase 3 change, but I swear I remember something about the landscape and fencing in that discussion. Does any other commissioners remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. That's a good point. I didn't catch it. And we did ask that we did ask about enhancing the landscape, and that a landscape plan be brought back to the staff, as I recall.
Okay, thank you. That means that I'm not getting early dementia and that I read that correctly. Thank you so much. I do remember that note. Okay, that's the only change that I recommend, is that we refer back to that in this number 3 item.
So is the correction that the landscape / fencing plans to come back to staff or to DRC? What was the direction?
You know, I thought we were saying that it needed to come back to staff, but I know that we discussed it. I honestly don't remember the detailed discussion, but we wanted to make sure that that plan continued down to the end and was, I'm not sure if robust is the word I'm thinking of, but maybe Commissioner Jorgensen can add to that.
Yeah, I think it was to go to staff, not back to DRC, but yes, that it continued to the end and that it be robust. I agree.
And I agree also. I was there and have the same recollection of this.
Thank you.
Do you have direction, Warren, on that one then?
Yeah, so it's to extend to the northern property line. Is that the extent we're talking about? Up
Yes.
to Cava RV?
Yes, it is.
That's correct.
Okay, I think we got it.
All right, very good. If there are no other notes or comments on the minutes, we would seek a motion to approve the Development Review Committee meeting minutes of April 5th as amended as discussed in this meeting, for April 19th as amended and discussed within this meeting, and the Planning Commission minutes of April 13th as is shown on the screen that's in front of all of us now. Is there a motion to that effect?
This is Commissioner Christensen. I make a motion that we approve them.
We have a motion by Commissioner Christensen. Is there a second?
I'll second that. This is Davis.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Do we need a roll call vote on this? I assume we do, please.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Covarrubias?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chairperson Kogler?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Oops, I was muted. I'm sorry about that. Ready to move on to other reports. The Housing Constraints and Advisory Committee is the first of those. Is there a staff comment on that one?
Yes, the Housing Constraints Committee met about 2 weeks ago. They were looking at the potential to expand the boundaries of the Uptown specific plan. They had a kind of a workshop with the consultant where they kind of discussed potential changes, especially on the west side. They requested some additional maps that they could go out and kind of field test some of the areas to kind of ascertain where maybe the natural breakpoints were for the Uptown specific plan. So it was a productive meeting. The committee continues to do work, and they'll likely come back with some formal recommendations in the future in terms of the boundaries on the Uptown specific plan. At the same time, we have been soliciting proposals for a consultant to prepare a comprehensive update to the zoning code. We have received 2 proposals. Staff is in the process of reviewing and likely going to be doing interviews for those consultants. Hopefully in the next couple months, we will have somebody under contract that can make regular reports, both to the Planning Commission and Housing Constraints Committee, as we move forward with the zoning code update, which will include any changes to the Uptown plan.
One question, Warren, on that. Both Commissioner Neal and I sit on the Housing Opportunities Constraints Committee. You had commented at the last meeting and offered to provide a larger scale map for us, and what Darcy was kind enough to send out was an 11 by 17 format, breaking the overall project area into 3 maps. The problem for most of us probably is that we really don't have larger format printers that'll print 11 by 17, so we're still back to 8.5 by 11. Maybe that's fine. Is there an option to get any further information out to members of the committee in a little bit larger form?
Yeah, and I printed some maps for some other committee members. Do both Neal and Kogler want the 30 by 40 map printed? I can get those done.
I would like to have that personally, and I guess the only thing I wonder about is if perhaps the ones that you have printed to date were based on requests. Did the committee know that they could make such a request? Should we reach out to them and see if they want them in addition to Commissioner Neal and myself?
Yeah, I'll have Darcy follow up with all the other committee members, see if anybody else wants them. But we can definitely get them printed tomorrow for you too, if that's your desire.
I personally would appreciate that, and I'd be glad to swing by the library and pick that up at the appropriate time.
Okay.
Warren, I'm happy with the 11 by 17s and or iPad, so we don't need to print one for me.
Okay, will do.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments, Warren, on that one, or commissioner questions on the housing group? Okay. The second report is a newly constituted group, of which perhaps Commissioner Jorgensen learned she's on this by reading the agenda. The Railroad Street Ad Hoc Committee report. Comments on this one by staff?
Yeah, so we put this on here just for regular reports. We haven't had the chance yet to convene the ad hoc committee. We're looking at dates in early May. So staff will be coordinated with Christensen, Jorgensen, and Kogler on dates for that first kickoff meeting.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Jorgensen.
Kogler, Chairperson Kogler?
Yes, Commissioner Neal.
We should officially ask Chairperson or Commissioner Jorgensen if she wished to be on the ad hoc committee, since we appointed her when she was off.
Great minds think alike. I was headed just to there. Commissioner Jorgensen, would you be willing to serve? I don't even know if you know what you're committing to, but would you blindly commit to do so?
I'm maybe not blind, but nearsightedly committing. I had heard that I was nominated, and I think I would be very much like to be on this ad hoc committee. Not sure what it entails, but it's for a good cause, and I'm very happy to do it.
That's the spirit.
But that's what I get. Just so everybody knows, that's what happens when you miss a meeting.
It is indeed, and you can blame all of the commission for doing that. So
I love to hear that excitement from her. That's just fantastic.
she's just chomping to get to that first meeting, isn't she?
I am
Looking
excited.
forward to it.
No, I am excited.
Very good. Thank you for your willingness to join the group. The DRC schedule is in the packet as well. Are there any substitutions that anybody needs to discuss through May, June, and July, or are those the commitments that are identified there doable for everybody?
Commissioner Kogler, I am fine on May, June, and July. We've just finalized plans for a trip. It's in October, which is way out there, but I will be gone 3 of the Mondays in October. So that I was wondering if any of the commissioners on maybe September or August would be willing to trade months with me.
This is Commissioner Covarrubias. I'd be happy to.
Wonderful. So I'll do September and you'll do October?
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other conflicts anybody has? If not, we'll move forward. Next item on our agenda is comments by planning commissioners. We'll kind of run, I'm just going to hopscotch around a bit here and start with Commissioner Gibson.
I have no comments, thank you.
Very good. Let's go to Commissioner Covarrubias.
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
No comments tonight, thanks.
Commissioner Jorgensen.
Yeah, I do have a comment. I know that staff is preparing some type of standards that I think we'll be reviewing for the parklets downtown, because I think it's the city's intention to retain those for quite some time, which I am fully in support of doing that. But I drove downtown midday today, and it just been kind of going the opposite direction on 12th Street than I usually go, going west. They're sad. They're sad, sad, sad. And it really makes our really charming downtown completely not charming. So I hope that that can move quickly and that we can have really some standards that would elevate us back to where we were with our downtown character. So that's my only comment. I know it's in the works. I just hope we can do it quickly. Thank you.
So could staff comment on that really quickly?
Absolutely.
Probably be good just to get some information out on this. So the parklets that are throughout the downtown exist basically under the council's emergency declaration for the COVID-19 incident. So those were basically an emergency installation that was put out by the city in terms of the K-rail barriers last summer to accommodate any restaurant or wine tasting use that needed it when they were unable to operate indoors. So those were put up quickly. There were no design standards or parameters. All the coverings that were put in were basically kind of ad hoc changes that occurred to deal with the winter issues. So we did go back to the city council about a month ago and ask for direction in terms of what the council wanted to do with both this interim emergency parklet program, in terms of how long that should continue. And then the second question was, did they want to convert or allow any of these to convert into more of a semi-permanent parklets that would then be subject to some sort of design review process? So on the first question, how much longer do these temporary emergency parklets exist? The council voted that they end on November 1st of this year. So they've agreed to continue to provide the K-rails, which the city is renting basically to the end of October, and then they want all of them removed so that the streets are clear for the holiday events and that sort of thing. The second question was, should we start to move forward with plans for some sort of semi-permanent, more limited parklet program that would be subject to design standards? There, we did not get clear direction from the city council. There was a lot of concerns about long-term, how the parklets affect downtown parking. They basically didn't give staff direction to create a long-term program. They did ask that we do some additional outreach to the businesses. We have met with a group of downtown restaurant owners that have parklets. They have expressed their desire to convert at least some of these to long-term semi-permanent parklets. Right now, it's our understanding that the business community is working on some sort of proposal that they hope to present to the city council in the near future. I think the businesses from the meeting I attended are very sensitive to the appearance issue, and they do know that the current state of affairs of the parklets wouldn't be acceptable on a long-term basis. So I do expect that there's going to be additional discussion on this item at the council level, and if we do get, and then I guess we'll find out from the council if they want to direct staff to actually prepare that program. And if we do, there will be some sort of opportunity for the Planning Commission, I think, to participate, at least at the design review level.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for raising that, Commissioner Jorgensen, because I pass through downtown frequently, and the parklets have served their purpose well, I think. Admittedly, they had to go in quickly, and therefore the design, if you call it that, of the various structures are all over the board. But I think what it does is it completely detracts from any building facades that lie behind it. And I've sat through enough DRC meetings where we've talked about materials and colors and so forth, even on some of those kind of park square buildings. And that's pretty much obliterated by the current parklets that are there. So I would hope, and I would ask, I guess, staff that if the council schedules this for discussion, if you would please be kind enough to let the planning commissioners know, and so that we don't miss that on the agenda, so that we can at least tune in, if not comment at that time. But it seems like I would agree with Commissioner Jorgensen that the sooner the better. If those are going to expire in November, we're into the winter months, the colder months, and people may want to have something to replace those with. And I think we need adequate time to address the myriad of issues that's associated with these things, from aesthetics to parking to revenue and all the rest. So I would agree, and I thank you, Roberta, for bringing that up. Any other comments on that point? If not, I think we're in the middle of Commissioner comments, and Commissioner Jorgensen, was there anything else you would like to raise?
No, thank you. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Christensen.
I have no comments tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay, Commissioner Neal.
No comments this evening.
And I have no comments either. So with that, we will move on to our next item, which is staff comments.
Yes, thank you. So speaking of COVID-19, so the county officially entered the orange tier, which is a less restrictive tier with a red tier that we've been on. The main changes is that increases the occupancy for restaurants and some other internal operational uses. So that is good news. It shows that we're continuing to make improvement. The governor has basically identified June 15th as a, quote, reopening date for the state. We expect that the restrictions will be further reduced and the tier system may be eliminated at that point. We don't have clear direction in terms of exactly what the state's going to announce for the June 15th date, although it does appear that most of the states moving in the direction where likely they will be able to reduce the requirements in June. Based on that, the city is beginning the discussions of reopening plans. So we have lots of different facilities and operational uses that have been changed and restricted based on COVID. We expect that we'll be announcing kind of reopening, probably some sort of phased reopening plans for different uses and buildings in May. The reconvening of public meetings for the Planning Commission and City Council is an item that's being reviewed. There is no schedule yet on that. I think those public group indoor meetings are one of the most difficult uses to reconvene. So we don't know exactly when we're going to be able to do that, but that is also one of the items we're tracking, and hopefully we'll have more information in May in terms of kind of what the expectations are in terms of when we might be back to in-person meetings or some sort of hybrid meeting process. So any questions on kind of COVID? Very well. Just looking ahead on the Planning Commission agendas, your next meeting looks like it's Tuesday, May 11th. So I think we have a 20-unit apartment complex potentially scheduled on Niblick Road. So we're looking at that. That same week, we hopefully will have the Railroad Street Ad Hoc Committee. The Planning Commission also asked to agendize a discussion of Paso Robles Street, which is kind of that industrial corridor into downtown with the off-ramp. We're kind of looking at dates where we might have just some sort of kind of preliminary discussion, study session on that item. The city fire station number 3 out on Union Road has gone to DRC. Staff's working on getting that ready. That'll probably be the end of May that we're looking at. The Hotel Paso Robles on 14th Street that was reviewed by DRC. Staff's continuing to work on that, so that may be ready more or less in June. Boys School Reuse Plan, EIR. We expect to issue the notice of preparation for the EIR probably next week. We expect to do a scoping meeting with the Planning Commission for environmental issues in late May on that one. And let's see, the Wright Building on American Way should be ready probably in May or June as well. So I think the next couple meetings or so should be pretty busy for the Planning Commission. So stay tuned on that. And Darren, anything else to add? Okay, that concludes staff's update.
Very good. Thank you, Warren. Anything else the committee needs to bring to our attention? Otherwise, we will, I'll seek a motion for adjournment.
This is Commissioner Gibson. I move to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Gibson, seconded by Commissioner Christensen, was it?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, thank you. All in favor, aye. We can do this by voice. Aye.
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 Very good. Thank you all. We'll reconvene on May 11th with apparently a little busier agenda than we perhaps had tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.